Welcome back to the Ministry of Jesus Christ Parable Podcast, led and directed by Adam Shamoon under the special guidance of Mr. Dem at the AVLI Mission of Jesus Christ special religion class over the summer. Thank you guys all for tuning in to this amazing and wonderful podcast that we are going to learn a lot about Jesus and his parables during. And it's really important to highlight these parables because they're some of the ways that Jesus really taught so much to us about Christianity deep under the surface of just what specifically happened in these books. So, like, if we look deeper into what happened, we'll really learn a lot of what Jesus wanted us to know about Christianity. So, just to give a brief introduction. So, what are parables? So, parables are short readings and teachings in the Bible that may be a little far-fetched in today's society, but can serve a deliberate purpose of teaching us a specific lesson or idea that Jesus wants us to adhere to as Christians. So he often taught parables using examples, like short stories and spiritual lessons. So today I'm going to be exploring three parables as a part of this assignment, which are the mustard seed, the prodigal son, and the unforgiving servant. So, just to give a little brief synopsis of the parable of the mustard seed. So, basically, we see that a tiny mustard seed grows into a massive tree that provides shelter to birds. So, if you don't know, a mustard seed is known as the smallest seed. And so, really, Jesus is showing how just such a small piece of matter or our small faith can really flourish if we pour water into it or if we pour our time into it. He really provides an allegorical meaning there. So it really means that even the smallest beginnings of God's kingdom can grow into something great and grand. Okay, and so the specific themes that this parable touches on are that of the importance of the kingdom of God and how we should um, grace and faith, like how we should always really invest in our faith because even though we may not be super faithful at one time, continuous efforts to get closer to God will over time compound and lead us to be more holy people overall. The real idea is that um, something visual to picture in your mind is just this small mustard seed growing into a very large tree with birds nesting in it, and showing how the birds can be representative of the fact that our small faith can flourish into a tree, and then the birds are like other people coming to our faith because of how strong we are in our faith. So this can also help other people in doing so, and it's really just a powerful thing. The mustard seed, such a small thing, but it can flourish to be so massive, which is why I would consider it personally to be one of Jesus's top parables that taught us so much. And it's very impactful on the Christian community. To this day, honestly, it's very important. So, next, I'm going to touch on the parable of the prodigal son. Obviously, this is also another very famous, um, honestly, ubiquitously known uh, parable in the Bible. And the parable of the prodigal son, it's really just about this one son uh, who takes his father's inheritance. So there are two sons. One son takes his father's inheritance, goes spends it on degeneracy like um, pleasure, gambling, uh, women, and uh, other sinful activities that are straying him away from God and damaging his overall relationship with God. And this sort of wayward son is really just doing bad things with his life. But ultimately, he decides that uh, this sinful life has not filled the void. So he comes back to his home. He returns in deep shame and sadness and remorse. And surprisingly, his father is joyful to have him back. He honestly loves that his son is back. And even though he committed great atrocities and maybe didn't make the most mature of decisions, he overall created something so epic, and that's his love. Like his love to his son was so epic and great, so he could never let go of that. And so, after the son returned in shame, the father really just welcomed him back in such open arms and honestly forgave him for terrible and horrific actions that his son had committed, which is something so great about this father and really shows how you can really get past a lot of atrocities. However, when he returned, the other son who had stayed with him and who had not squandered away the inheritance like the other brother was very sad that his father gifted him his father gifted the wayward son some lamb, which is meant for only this like fatty lamb, which is meant for the most sacred, special, and awesome occasions, which he had rarely gotten, if ever. But his other brother snuck off and got it somehow. So that made him very jealous. And so this really just shows how you can take two lessons from this that you shouldn't look over your shoulder and be envious of others, like the son that stayed with his father. But at the same time, you have to recognize that God doesn't want sinners to stay away from him. When he recognizes that a sinner is remorseful or wants to get in a closer relationship with him, that's why he opened up the world to repentance, to that sacrament, so he could have a close relationship with sinners who want to stray away from that life. Like the son wanted to get away from his life of degeneracy. He knew it wouldn't fill the void of his life. So he wanted to dive into this relationship with his father. Just like if we sin, God the Father allows us to get back in a relationship with him, which is something so powerful and taken for granted at all times. And really, just the themes of this are that you should always be forgiving. There's such a big theme of forgiveness in this parable. Like, you need to forgive others. You need to let sinners who have transcended against you back into your life. And you need to forgive people because ultimately you are all children of God and discriminating against someone or um, being rude to someone or excluding someone is never allowed. You should always include others and forgive people who have transgressed against you. Okay? These are the people that need it most. Sometimes they could have mental illness or they could be suffering through something. So you need to always forgive. And then another theme is grace. And finally, unconditional love. Just as the father showed to his degenerate son, his wayward son, we must show to other people. And this is the same love that God the Father shows us. He's always looking to help us, and his love for us is unconditional. Whether we sin, whether we damage our relationship with him, God will always let us get into a better, stronger relationship with him. That's just the love of God. That's why he loves us. We're his children, and he always wants us to do well. And so, really, you can just imagine this father running back to his degenerate son and pulling him back into his land because he wants his son back. He loves his son, just like God the Father does with us. When we're straying away too much, when we're getting away from him, he wants us to come back. He embraces us with open arms, no matter what we do. God the Father is always looking for a relationship with everyone in the world, whether or not they have sinned, whether or not they have done bad stuff, if they are willing to put in the effort to be in a relationship with God, God is willing to put in effort with them. God's love is not earned, it's just freely given. We need to recognize that God gives his love to everyone. Okay, next, I'm going to start touching on the parable of the unforgiving servant. So basically, this parable touches on the fact that a servant is forgiven of his debt, his outstanding debt that he had not paid before, and he refuses to give a small debt owed to him. So we really just learn from this parable that God's forgiveness must change our hearts. Like we can't just let God's forgiveness stay with us and we don't do anything about it. We need God's forgiveness in order to change our hearts. And the real themes that stand out to me in this Bible verse are the themes of forgiveness to oneself, like that we should always be changed by God's forgiveness in the better and really grow closer to Him for this. And justice, being committed to doing justice, doing the right thing at all times, because even though we can get God's forgiveness for doing something bad, that does not mean we should ever do anything bad. And then finally, grace. We should always have grace on others, just like God has grace on us when we transgress against Him. and we do bad things. So we need to let that forgiveness and grace from God change us. And I think you could just imagine a courtroom scene or two servants contrasting mercy and judgment. Really, just what this Bible verse displays. And particularly, I just wanted to really emphasize that God's forgiveness is something that should not be taken for granted. And anyone that is deserving of God's grace, which is everyone on earth, needs to thank God for everything He does for us. It's just outstanding what He does for us. And um, just remember the actual summary itself, a little bit of it, just to reiterate it, it really just tells the story of a servant who's forgiven a massive debt by his kings, but then refuses to give a much smaller debt owed to him by a fellow servant, because it just emphasizes the importance of forgiveness, emphasizing that those who have been forgiven much should also be willing to forgive others. So if you're forgiven by God, always forgive others. That's the bottom line of this. Okay, and so next we're going to talk about the sort of application of the unforgiving servant, that God's grace is meant to be shared. When God gives grace to you, give it to others. Spread the grace. True forgiveness transforms the behavior of us. The forgiveness that we're given by God will always transform us into someone better. And like I've already just to reiterate that something that I've already mentioned, that we're really called by God to extend the grace, to extend His love, to extend His forgiveness, to extend His grace, His justice, to extend everything that God sends for us. And by forgiving others, we're called to do this, and we can give this to others. And so, just just to conclude a little bit, I know we talked about these beautiful parables that have really important real world applications. They're very important, and everybody should learn about them. These parables teach eternal truths in simple stories. Jesus invites us to embrace the growth of God's kingdom, receive and extend forgiveness, and live in grace and humility. Like we've seen this multiple times throughout all these parables. And I just really want to talk a little bit just personally about how I need to be living these lessons out today. I think I need to be spreading my faith more and really just making sure everyone feels my forgiveness and love. Those who have been rude to me, have transgressed against me. I should really try to heal my relationships with everyone. And that's about it. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Mission of Jesus Christ Parables podcast. I appreciate you for coming out on this final exam. And I really hope you learned a little something about the mustard seed, the parable of the mustard seed, the parable of the prodigal son, and the parable of the unforgiving servant. Have a wonderful night, Mr. Den.